All right, hey everyone, it's Andy Demetra, voice of the Georgia Tech Yellow Jackets. My friends at IMG College asked me to give you a little behind-the-scenes look at the spotter charts that I'm preparing for our broadcast Saturday versus Syracuse, taking behind my thought processes, my philosophies for putting together basketball charts so that I can have a quality call on game day. So like any good radio broadcaster, better to be heard than seen. I'm going to flip this camera around and let's take a look. All right, so here's my chart. I apologize if the camera works shaky. I had a lot of coffee this morning. It is Friday. I use an Excel template. This might look familiar to some of you. I, like a lot of broadcasters, got my chart template from someone else. I don't recall when or from whom, but I've been using this now for upwards of 8 years. It might not be as ornate as some others you see, but at this point, my eyes know exactly where they need to go to locate the information I need, which is really important. Pretty standard stuff up top. I've got space down at the bottom of my chart to expand on the bios of the coaches. Team season stats, offensive and defensive, where those rank within conference. And then in this box over here, I'll include more of my overview stats, my general notes, things of that nature. Often I'm looking at this stuff as I'm coming out of commercial break or during a stoppage to help frame the game for my audience. And that's a phrase that I use often when I'm preparing my charts. How can I frame the game? How can this information frame the game better for my audience in a way that they'll understand? I'll also use this space to expand on any kind of team stats. I'm very evangelical about tempo-free numbers. I will wear out my subscription to KenPom. I love digging through those numbers and trying to identify a strength of Georgia Tech versus a weakness of the opponent. So many good stats come from that mindset. Where does a strength match up with a weakness? Where does a strength match up with a strength? Great example here for Saturday. Georgia Tech is very unselfish passing the basketball. They're number one in the ACC in assist rate. Syracuse is last in the country in opponent assist rate. Why might that be important? Well, as it turns out, I dug into the numbers, and Syracuse against teams that rank in the top 50 nationally in assist rate, they're 0-4 with a loss to Georgia Tech. Often those numbers that are most illuminating, they come from two things: curiosity and tenacity. Having the curiosity to ask yourself a question and then the tenacity to go and find the answer. As far as the individuals go, I will confine it generally to the top 8 to 10 guys in a rotation. The end of bench players, the walk-ons who are unlikely to play, I'll jot those down in pen once I print my chart out, but I want to devote most of my space to the guys I'm likely to see. Again, standard setup: height, weight, class, hometown, position. I'll always enter in the season stats first. If any of these numbers merit extra elaboration, where a guy ranks in the ACC, if he's hot or cold in a certain statistic, I'll keep those close by. And then in the box up here, all my other good stuff. I try to start broad and then finish narrow. So I'll always begin by entering in what a player did his last game and then what he did the last time they faced a certain opponent. So again, I can have a frame of reference. If a guy comes out smoking hot from the field, does that follow a trend? Does it go against a trend? And a lot of the best numbers that you can share with your audience relate to whether a guy is on a hot streak or a cold streak and whether his play that day matches up with that. I got my career highs of all the pertinent statistics down below. And then I love sifting through the internet, going through that wormhole and trying to find as many interesting tidbits as I can about these players, both for Georgia Tech and for the opponent. I've learned that often that's what our listeners will remember the most from our broadcast. I can call a transition fast break layup really smoothly, but that's generally not what a fan is going to remember most. They might remember that exotic factoid that I shared about a particular player. So I'm always very determined to find those neat stories, background information about players that might have some takeaway value for our audience. Good example here for Saturday: Andrew White III of Syracuse. His dad played basketball at Morehouse, just down the road here in Atlanta, and his younger brother plays at the University of Charlotte for a former Georgia Tech legend in Mark Price. John Giddle, the point guard, he began his college career at Arkansas Little Rock. He was teammates with a guy who subsequently transferred to Georgia Tech and wrapped up his career a year ago. I try for my chart to have 4 S's on it: stats, stories, stakes, and scouting reports. I will keep my scouting report information sort of underneath the names. I love picking the brains of the coaches, watching practice, seeing the game plans come together so I can reference some of those little tidbits that I pick up along the way. For example, Tyler Lydon, if he's a good rebounder in traffic, that's something the coaches talked about in the first meeting. If he goes up and grabs a tough rebound in traffic, well, I can share that information with our audience and kind of help round out that picture for them. Bottom of the charts, always hit on the main points of what a team did in its last game. I got some space for additional notes that, again, I can use during stoppages, coming out of commercial breaks, just to fill out the picture. If I don't have a really dense, detailed chart staring back at me, I don't feel confident about my ability to deliver a quality call to my audience. So I like to have the peace of mind of a lot of information staring back at me, knowing that I can pivot any number of directions depending on how the game unfolds. That is basically, in a nutshell, how I like to prepare my chart so that I can serve my audience the way that they deserve to be served come game day. So there you have it. Let me turn this camera around here. All right, so there you go. A little bit of insight into my charts for our broadcast Saturday. You can follow me on Twitter at Andy Demetra. I'm sure the folks at IMG are going to put somewhere around here in post-production all that good stuff about where you can listen to us on the Georgia Tech IMG Sports Network. Everybody have a great postseason, great start to the season, safe travels, outstanding calls, and I'll see you down the road.